Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interview Julia Browne. Julia is a Black history specialist. She does everything from tours to helping universities to even movies. We learn all about Black history in France and much more on this fascinating episode today. So welcome to the show, Julie. How are you today?
I'm great, Crystal. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We have been kind of circling each other for a long time in Paris, but I've never actually gotten to meet you. So I'm so happy to finally share your story today.
Me too. I'm glad to finally meet up with you as well.
I love going back to what brought people to France. I want to hear the story of where you're from and what actually brought you to France.
Well, you said it's only 30 minutes, right? So I don't know, that might take up a little bit more than 30 minutes. What brought me to France was, just to get straight to the point, was I've been a Francophile since in my teens, and I don't know how that happened or what. Well, I don't really know. It just kind of was there. I was interested in, I was reading books by, Simone de Beauvoir and Colette. I was watching French movies. I was studying French in school, and I was, grew up in Canada, in Ontario, and French is the second language and official second language. And we were obliged to learn French in school, which was, great with me. We just learned grammar. We didn't learn how to speak or anything. So I wanted to speak. I wanted to speak more. So I did a year abroad program. Well, I did a study program in Quebec. And then I did a study abroad program in Aix-en-Provence. So that was the first place I landed on a permanent basis. I lived there for a year and a half, and it was just night and day, a lifestyle that I could not have imagined. And I loved the old walls, even though a little bit claustrophobic to begin with. But I just loved the lifestyle. I loved the feeling. And for me, the feel of a place is just as important as any other aspect of why you choose to live in a city. Anyway, so I lived in Aix-en-Provence, and I did the study abroad program there at the University Aix-Marseille. And I met the man who became my husband there. So that started a whole new chapter in life. And we went back to Montreal, lived there for 5 years, and then came back to Paris, where he had family. And that's how I really got to France. But it really was working in me for a long time, since I was a teenager.
Yeah, and I think that's like what happens to so many people. They take a trip here, they do study abroad, and then it's something sticks, and they're like, I have to come back. And I love that you went back to Canada and still made it back to France, because sometimes when people go back home, they don't actually come back. So you made it back.
Oh yeah, I'm a bit of a rolling stone. I really do move around quite a bit, but and to that end, I was also a flight attendant. So that sort of helped me satisfy that need to be in different places and to sample different places. And when I have to say that when I first started flying to Paris and staying in Paris as a flight attendant, didn't like it very much at all. It just didn't work for me at all. But somehow it stuck. I came back to it, and the fact that my husband was French too, and so it just timing is what it was.
Exactly. And we always have the choice to come back and forth. I tell people that all the time because I have so many of my clients who are like, you're living my dream. I want to move to France. And I'm like, well, come for 3 months, see if you like it, and decide. Because, it's a big commitment, all that visa stuff and everything that comes with being an immigrant expat. But talk a little bit about founding Walk with the Spirit. You specialize in Black history tours, started in 1994. What inspired you to start these tours?
My professor did. I was studying under the professor, the late Professor Emeritus Michel Fabre. He was specialized in African American literature and culture, and he founded the Center for African American Studies there at the Sorbonne on Rue des Écoles, a little building. And outside of it, you can see a sign for Sarah Bernhardt. Also did something in that building. But anyway, I was studying under him, and there was a conference, 1992-93, on African Americans in Paris that he organized with Harvard, and I think it was with Columbia. And I was volunteering as a student and just tagged along, and somebody did a tour. One of his students did a tour, and this attracted academics from all over North America, all the best of the best, and from all over Europe as well. And so this person, Bruce Dick, actually, he's a professor at North Carolina Chapel, I think it is, Chapel Hill. Anyway, he did a tour, and I thought, oh my goodness, look at this, all these places. It was all around Rue des Écoles, between Rue des Écoles and Rue de l'Odéon and Rue, Monsieur Le Prince. And I thought, oh my goodness, look at all these places that we didn't know about, that has this history, and yet there's no sign of it anywhere. So I took my professor's work with his blessings, and he mentored me in looking up other places. And he had this book out called A Street Guide to African Americans in Paris. So I took this and I walked around with this book. And it was just for me. It was for my own personal knowledge. I love research. I love education. I just wanted to know. So I took this book and started in my neighborhood. And I was up in the 17th district, up at near Place Clichy, even further north than Place Clichy. And I found out that Langston Hughes used to live in my neighborhood. And I was a literature major. So Langston, was a big part in, how you see how the African American experience, especially during the Harlem Renaissance. But he lived in my neighborhood, that I could actually walk into the building. Well, I snuck in, actually. The concierge was, I timed it so that the concierge was at lunch back in the day when they had concierges instead of the digicodes that they have now. And I snuck up and I stood in front of the door, and the book said, Langston Hughes lived here, right at the top on the top floor, and he wrote his jazz poetry there. And it was just mind blowing. And I thought, I have to tell people this. I just have to tell people this. And you'd have to go through so many cities in the United States and even in Canada to be able to touch, to connect, cross paths with the memories of all these people that I found in this book. And you could do it all in Paris, in one city. It was just astounding. So I started telling people, my friends, about it, and I just, do more research at the Centre Georges Pompidou, and then somebody asked me, show us what you've got so far. Because I just kept talking about it. You know how you just get onto something, you get passionate about something, and they said, so show us. So I took my cue cards and I walked some of my friends around, and then this. An editor from Essence magazine contacted me, and she said, I heard that you do these tours. And I said, well, not really. It wasn't really a tour by then. It was just I show people around. So I took her out with my cue cards and stuff. And that is literally how it started, or just organic, just from following down the rabbit hole without question, something that I found so extraordinary and something that really connected me deeply to Paris, besides all the beautiful things that everybody talks about, the architecture, the art, the food, all that. But this was really personal.
And it's so funny how enthusiasm, it's contagious, So you were just doing this for fun, showing some friends around, and then it turned into a whole business for you.
Yeah. It took a while before it was a business. I was working full time I was teaching, and I did this on the weekend, and it was great fun. It got me out of the house on a Saturday and Sunday morning, and people would put money in my hands, and I would go, "Oh my goodness, people are giving me money for doing something that's just seems so easy and so much fun." And I would meet people from everywhere, and it was just it was something I could never have imagined of myself.
It's always great when you have a job where you're like, wow, I can't believe people are paying me to do this. That's always a good feeling.
Yeah, it was. But people knew about it. People. It was word of mouth that made it spread. I used to try to contact travel agents in the United States and say, "Would you, do you think your clients would be interested?" And they go, "African American history in Canada, in Paris, why?" And so, well, whatever. And so it came to me, people came to me through they forced their travel agent to make reservations, but they also just came on their own. And then through articles they read, the different newspapers and things like that. So it really was driven by other people's desire and need to know and need to connect. Wow, Paris, this could be our place too.
Exactly. And you got to give the people what they want. Like you said, people were asking for this and nobody was doing it really. So it's so nice that you found that little niche. It's always shocking to me how many things are not happening in Paris and tourism that could be, like it takes time, for people to figure this stuff out. Even 10 years ago, I remember I had a friend who had a Deux CV, the Deux Chevaux car, the little French old car. And I said, we should give tours in those cars because he had one. And now, there's like a million companies doing it. But 10 years ago, there wasn't even anybody doing it. So it's funny. Yeah, exactly. And what's something you wish more people knew about Black history in France? I mean, I'm sure there's so many hidden gems. What's something that you feel like a lot of people just don't know about Black history in France?
How much it has actually shaped French culture and French history, and how it is part of it is world history, and you can't, if you try to extract it, you're leaving out there's a big hole in history. Paris is called a meeting place for the diaspora, or I was pronounced differently, diaspora. Paris is a meeting place. You have people that come through and live through here now. They are connected to the former colonies, in, for example, the colonialization in Africa, but also the former slave trade, the triangular slave trade in the Caribbean, and then from other parts of Europe. So all of that history, that history, started in France in the 1600s, and it's a long history that has influenced France's history. Its influence on the outside world, and with their own, policies, their foreign policies, their internal policies, but also their cultural, what their culture has turned into. For example, for example, the 1920s. We just take an era that everybody is very, very familiar with, the Roaring Twenties. Roaring Twenties what was the soundtrack of the Roaring Twenties? Jazz. And where did that come from? That came from African American music, from African American musicians who marched that music right through France during World War I as soldiers. But then that goes back to what were African Americans doing in the war in World War I in France, and then goes back to what was the American, why were they in segregated troops, and why did, there's so many questions. And these are things that I found out as I have lived in France, and I didn't get there knowing all these things, but it took a long time, it was a continual education process, and still is, for me to understand the ties between France and Africa. And now, you're in Paris and you see there's festivals around African culture. Little Africa is booming and becoming, it's not just like a neighborhood of immigrants, it's becoming even a tourist destination, And but where did that come from? How did that start? What about the Caribbean? What is the connection between Haiti and France, and the people from Martinique, Guadeloupe, and the other French overseas departments? What about where does that all fit in? It all comes together in Paris. So I would like people to know that you may look around and you may not see it, but it's everywhere. People come to Paris to go to jazz clubs, right? They come to Paris for the music, and they come to Paris for the culture, to the different museums, and the influence is everywhere. You go right now. There's an exhibition at the Petit Palais, and there have been many of them. And this one's around the modern age, the temps modernes. And it's when you go through it, you'll see the African and the American and the Caribbean influence in and how it influenced the 1920s. So you just have to look. People just have to look beyond the larger French narrative and go dig down deeper and see France has always been a country that has been a country of refuge. They have welcomed peoples from different countries and different social and political situations. And then what those people bring to France, it reflects so well on France. Pablo Picasso wasn't born in France. Matisse, where was he born? All the artists, all the musicians, a lot of them they bring their talents to France, and that's what France is. France is, even though it doesn't want to, it is a melting pot of the world. And so I would like people to realize that French culture is made up of all the other cultures that it has welcomed and has made space for.
Yeah, and I think that's really true about the melting pot, because when people think of France, they don't, like you said, they don't really think about that so much, but it's so true.
I could say a lot about that, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, that's a whole other episode.
No, that's why you take tours, right?
Exactly. And speaking of tours, tell us one of your favorite stories in French history and Black French history. I'm sure it's hard to pick one of your children, but do you have one that really stands out for you?
Gosh, that is such a big question. My first mind thing would go like to Josephine Baker, and the fact that just the honors that she has stacked up since her arrival in 1925, and just the astounding, and I keep using that word, but it's the life that she made for herself here, coming in as a 19-year-old young lady from St. Louis, Missouri, what she became, and to this point that she's now interred in the Pantheon among all the greats. But not just that, she's going to be on the new coin, right? The new one of the centime coins, along with Simone Weil and So most people would start with Josephine Baker just because her career has just been the stuff of fairy tales. And if you go around Paris, you can see there are more signs or tributes to Josephine around the city than any other person of color. But I like to tell the story. I like the story of the Sorbonne University, and I'm not going to go deep into it, but I'm just going to say the Sorbonne University as a source of rejuvenance, as a source of renaissance, and a source of creativity, and creating not just in the French arena, but also creating a Black awareness out of the Sorbonne University. There have been, for example, if I start like in the early 1920s, there's two sisters out of five called the Nardal sisters, Paulette and her sister Jeanne, and they studied at the Sorbonne. Paulette was the first person of color, a woman, to study at the Sorbonne, and she was from I think she's from Martinique, and but she and her sister created a space. They created a place for dialogue among the Black diaspora there in Paris. So you had not only the Africans coming to their salon that they created in the south of Paris, but they were studying at the Sorbonne. But they also created a space for African Americans to come into that space, like the Harlem Renaissance writers, but also African writers as well. And some of them were students, some of them were passing through, but they all gathered at the Sorbonne. And that went from clandestine and a secret place where people of color, the diaspora, could express themselves freely. They went to a larger creation of thing called negritude. That was the valorization of the Black culture, the Black, what is it to be Black identity. So that came out of that. So when you stand in front of the Sorbonne University, we think of all of the great thinkers. We think of the academics who have come out of it. We think of those beautiful buildings. But it was a place that fomented the creativity and the birth of this movement of awareness of Black identity here in France, and brought, again, come back to the point, brought the diaspora, strands of the diaspora together. So I like that place. And when you stand on it on Boulevard Saint-Michel or also on Rue des Écoles, I like that space because I can feel the vibe there. And I know what happened there. And I know that in the side streets, there may be jazz clubs close by. And I know, James Baldwin was spent time there. I think the artists spent time there. The GI soldiers studied there. Anna Julia Cooper did her PhD there at the age of, I think she was 65, there in 1925. And it's just the sometimes how you walk around a city, and in Paris, you stand on the ground and stuff has happened there. There doesn't have to be a sign on the wall, but you just can feel it, and everybody can feel it, and it's a thing that draws people in subconsciously. Maybe I'm going off into the deep end, but it is. There are places where you just know, and you feel, and you just want to sit and take it in for a little while. And so you sit in the cafe there, you walk around the square, you sit around the fountain there, and you listen to the splashing, and you look at the doors, and you look at the sculptures on the building, and you become, just by engaging it, just by sitting still and engaging in it, you become part of that story, you become part of that history and open to what happens there.
I couldn't agree more. And I think so many people are attracted to Paris for that reason, because of that energy you're talking about. It's like undescribable, but things have happened here. You want to be a part of it. You want to learn more and know more about it. And how have your tours evolved over time from when you first started?
Well, I don't use cue cards anymore. but I do, doing the tours, I started with 1 and then 2, and then I branched out into bus walk tours, so you can take in a larger geography of the city. And then we did online. We've done online tours, online private, like for people who wanted to come, who couldn't come to Paris, especially during the pandemic, but they wanted to know the history and be there. So I did these personalized tours that zip people around Paris, and it was just such great fun. And it was a whole another way, but it gave me a different way to tell a story. So the way I tell there is a story that is told, but I build on it. So if you looked at my brochure, like maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago, it had some of the same tours, but they're not the same. So we have people come back and they see, and the tour is different because I build on it. And I learn and I educate myself on it, so that I'm not telling the same story all the time, but I'm adding new things in it, and bringing in new awarenesses of even things that I've learned, standing like in front of the Café du Flore or something like that. And I can bring in all kinds of new things every single time. So they changed on paper. It sounds kind of the same as it maybe did 15 years ago, but it has evolved. It's evolved. So you could take these tours more than once, over and over. And we've added, we've brought in more of the diaspora as well. So more of the Caribbean side. For example, when you're up in the 17th at Malesherbes, the Metro Malesherbes, there's the place that used to be called the Place des Trois Dumas. So the 3 Dumas. So you have a sculpture commemorative for the father, who was a general under Napoleon. His name was Alexandre Dumas. Yes, that was the name he took. And then his son, who we know as Alexandre Dumas, the writer, who wrote The Three Musketeers, The Count of Monte Cristo. He is just across the square. And his son, who's a playwright who wrote La Dame de Camélia, The Lady of Camellias, is on that as well. And now on that same space, we have a woman, a statue of the first statue of a Black woman in Paris. Her name was, they called her Solitude. And so she was a rebel fighter from Guadeloupe during the reestablishment of slavery in 1802. So we bring in new pieces and new new awarenesses, new ways of looking at the history, tying it into French history, but tying it into what's going on now, what's going on in the news now. How is this still pertinent? So we're always improving the tours. We're always building on them, and always educating in an up to date fashion. So but I also create itineraries, personalized, customized itineraries for travelers who want to perhaps spend a week in Paris or go further out, go to London or to Spain or to Portugal or to elsewhere, and include Black heritage in those places. So we do personalized itinerary along with the rest of, all the beautiful things. So what else do you go to Nice for? The wonderful things there too. But there's Black history. You could take the short trip over to Monaco, to the Monaco Cemetery, and see where Josephine Baker really is buried. So that so I try to bring people. I'm trying to pinpoint on the map where all this history is, so that when you come on a trip to Europe, you can tap into all of this, and you can feed into all of this. And now Bordeaux, Nantes, and so I create trips also for schools, for universities. And that's what I really, really love, is being able, when the professor and I get together and we, design the program, and I can take them to Nantes, and they're there for like 3 nights, and we can go to the Chateau de Duc de Bretagne and partner with them, so that the students get an experience there, and they learn about the history of the slave trade in that city, and then they go down to Bordeaux and all up and down the West Coast. So it's so we create an experience for people to tap into the history and the local traditions at the same time. So spreading out, we're partners all over now, everywhere. So, and as I sit in Montreal, there is a fellow here who does tours in Montreal, and I've taken his tour. And I just read this morning somebody's doing a tour up in Quebec City. So it's, and of course, since the George Floyd occurrence in 2020, there's been just that explosion of interest in tourism, Black tourism around the world. So that's all there. So we just keep doing all of that, and I write, and I've worked with some good friends of mine at Blue Line Films. We've got a film, 2 films, Paris Noir, African Americans in the City and Light. It's an hour-long documentary from World War I right through to 1960. It is A to Z, and from there, jumping up point to learning more. The last one we did was called Fighting for Respect. It is on the World War soldiers in France, and then what happened to them when they went back to the United States. That is an eye-opener, because again, people say, "Why? How did jazz come to Paris? How did African Americans? How did they fare here? Or how did they become to the troops that were awarded the most medals of honor of all the American troops?" There's so many stories to tell. So I work with a film company as well. So I work in partnerships with other people to produce other things that are customized to the needs of what people need. So that's what I'm here to educate. I'm here to spread the word, and in any way that people want to do it with me, and I create with my team as well.
Yeah, and I love how you're involved in so many different things, from planning travel, from planning for universities, to making movies about Black history. I mean, you've really found your niche and educating people who want to learn, and even more so now, like with Black Lives Matter, everything that's been going on. Like you said, it's a full circle, and we can always connect history to the now, like history repeating itself and all the craziness. And I always ask all my guests how they would define creativity in their own words. How would you define creativity?
Creativity is using what you have, just listening to yourself, honoring what you feel in yourself, whatever impulse it is you feel in yourself, and express it. It can be artistic. It can be music, but it all could be something as necessary as, fixing a car, or building a car, building an engine. It can be taking care of your plants. How do you display your plants in your house? What do you do with them, for example? It's everything that you find a solution for something, and it comes out of you, and that's your creativity. That is particular to you. Whatever issue, problem, conundrum that you find yourself in, there's a way out. So where there's no way, you don't think there's a way, you have a way. You can find a way to stop and listen. That's your creativity.
I love that, especially finding solutions. It's so true. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Julia. And where can people connect with you online and learn more about everything you're doing?
And thank you again for inviting me, Crystal. People can connect with me on our main website. It's walkthespirit.com. Our company is called Walking the Spirit Journeys and Walking Spirit Tours, but the website is walkthespirit.com. So you can connect with us there, info@walkthespirit.com. I'm on Instagram more and more, but not as much as I should be, at paris.beyond. Also on Facebook at Walking the Spirit Tours. And where else? That's it for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's plenty to follow along with. And we'll share all of that in the show notes. And thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Oh, thanks. Thanks again for inviting us. And just to say, Black history is world history. So it's not just for Black people. It's not just for people of color. It's for everybody.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.